Chapter 88. And we are up to number 5, I believe. Yes, number 5. Hey, Sif Hey, number 5. Okay, so we are going to discuss things whose primary purpose is muksa, things you can't do on Shabbos, but there's a secondary purpose. You can use them for something else. And so we'll see how and when they can be moved and handled in various things. Okay, so Sif Hein number 5. Kalim shem mechudim lasis b'hem malacha asur lasis b'Shabbos. Utensils that are specifically used to do things which you can't do on Shabbos. You're going, for an example, machteshes, a mortar, berachayim, like a grinding grinder, grindstones, a mill, the kurnas, a type of hammer, the kardum, an axe, brooms, which are for sweeping a house, which, as we learned earlier, houses used to have dirt floors. So not brooms we have today, but brooms they used to use on dirt floors. The shofar, so a shofar, a menorah, and by menorah we don't necessarily mean a Hanukkah menorah, any candelabra that people used to use. Machat shetoifrim bo, or a needle that people sew with. V'neira shleimim, and whole candles. By candles we don't mean so there's candles, bain shel chaylam shel shaivam, whether these candles are made out of animal fat or they're made out of wax. Psilois mesema geffen, wicks, and although it mentions the ones made out of cotton wool, but cotton wicks, but any wicks. The beged shatnez also levashoy, or shatnez clothes, mixture of wool and linen, which we're not allowed to wear. The chain kol b'yetz ba'ebel. Similarly, anything they can think of that's similar to these. So generally they're muksa. However, mutal taltal masarich gufon, you can move them for, we're going to say, for a few things. You can handle them for a few things, but the first one is for themselves. Going for an example, kunas the fasoya by goizen. You take the hammer to crack nuts. So you can take it for itself, its own purpose, it's made for banging things, and yet it has another purpose. Or kaldum lachtuk by dava machal, or an axe to cut some food. I'm not sure exactly what you're cutting up with the axe on your dining room table. Maybe one of those, sushi shows. They chop the sushi and make it. Get the axe and
maybe a cleaver.
Cleaver, that's it.
That's it. Well, even an axe, I'm sure. Today we're spoiled to have a variety of household utensils and various things. People used to have one knife. You had an axe. That watermelon, took care of it with the axe, whatever it is. So they would be some examples. Give you another example. Machat shalema, little ba'esakoitz, a whole needle that you might use to take out a thorn. Not fun, but someone gets a thorn stuck in them, and so you use a needle to get it out. In the brackets it says avonitel uksa oichuda surabachol tiltul. However, if the eye or the point is broken off, then you can't handle this needle at all, because now it has no purpose, can't be used for anything. So all of these things, if there's a secondary permissible use, you can handle them for their own purpose. In other words, to use them. Now we're going to say there's another way we can handle these things. You're allowed to handle these for their place, for their space. The Heinel, this means you want to use the place where the hammer is. The hammer is sitting on a chair, for example, and you would like to sit on the chair. So you can move the hammer, and now you can use the chair. And since in both of these situations you've handled it in a permissible way, you were allowed to. Likewise, if you forgot it was Shabbos, or you forgot you can't handle it on Shabbos when you picked up the hammer. So either, in other words, you haven't done it on purpose. Either you've forgotten or you've moved it, you're handling it in a permissible way or by mistake. Then now you don't have to put it down in the first available place. You can keep moving it more than necessary to put it wherever you want it. So although I could just take the hammer off the chair and put it in the corner right next to the chair, but once I'm allowed to pick it up in a permissible fashion, I'm actually going to take it into the garage and put it back in the toolbox, as an example. Avo, however, not for these reasons. You don't need it. And again, we'll just keep using the hammer. You don't need the hammer for itself. You don't need to break any nuts. You don't need the hammer for its place. You don't need its place. A person just wants to move it for itself. For example, he's worried it's been on the front porch, and he's worried someone's going to steal it, or he's worried it's going to rain and it'll get rusty, get ruined. In that case, now you're not allowed to move it. So only for its place or for a permitted use. An exception to this is a tefillin. Tefillin also you can't handle on Shabbos. However, if they're in a disrespectful place and they could get dirty. So, obviously a hammer is not like tefillin. If tefillin was in that situation, if a hammer was in that situation, you would have to leave the hammer where it is. But here, the tefillin could get dirty or it's disrespectful. Now you're allowed to move the tefillin and take them to a protected, a safe place. Okay, so we'll sum this one up. We're speaking about a item that's primarily made for something that you can't do on Shabbos. We gave the example, a hammer. Because hammer's made for building, which of course building we can't do on Shabbos. But it also has a permissible purpose. So for an example, cracking nuts. So you're allowed to move it for the permissible purpose. And you're also allowed to move it if you want the space where it is. And once you're allowed to move it, you can take it wherever you like. However, you can't move it just because you're worried it's going to get damaged or stolen. An exception to that is tefillin. That tefillin you can move because you're worried that it's may get dirty, never mind damaged or stolen. Yes, stop it.
So if a person has a tray that he lit Shabbos candles on, and it's now Shabbos morning and the candles are out, and you need the space on your dining room table, could you move that tray with the burnt out candles?
Yeah. Now we're going to get to that separately, but since you asked, we'll mention it briefly now. And just before I do, just again, a few more people signed on, just saying I had some wisdom teeth out. So if I'm not speaking clearly, sort of drawl a little bit, just let me know and I'll repeat what I said.
Very
But,
clear.
so the tray, a base, something that's a base for something that's muksa, is also muksa. So let's use a simple example before we get to the candlesticks. Let's say you have a little bowl and you put your spare change in the bowl. So the bowl itself is not muksa. A bowl can be used for all kinds of permitted things on Shabbos. Chocolate coated nuts, something nice to snack on. Hopefully, I'm not making everyone too hungry while we're learning. But here now, the coins are in the bowl. So the bowl has become a base to the muksa, and therefore the bowl is also muksa. It has the same rules as the coins. Because coins are muksa because you can't do anything with them on Shabbos. We can't buy and sell. Now, let's say the same bowl was a base for something that was muksa and also for something that's not muksa. So for example, as well as the coins, in the same bowl, you had some cufflinks and packet of toothpicks. Whatever else you might put in a bowl with coins. So now it's a base for muksa and non-muksa. So since the item itself is not inherently muksa, we're allowed to move it, even though there's muksa in it, but because it's also non-muksa. Another example might be a drawer. Sometimes a drawer has things in it that are muksas and things that aren't muksa. Now the drawer itself is not inherently muksa, so as long as it contains at least some non-muksa, we can move the drawer in and out. So back to the case of the candlesticks. If the tray only has the candlesticks on it, then it has become a base to something that's muksa, and therefore it has become muksa too. But if you put something else on the tray, so some people put a siddur or a challah or a bottle of wine or something, anything that's not muksa, and now it's a base for muksa and non-muksa, then once the candles are out, we can move the tray, because the tray itself is not inherently muksa, and as long as there's something that's not muksa on the tray, even though there's something that is muksa, then we can move it. Now, in theory, and make sure you hear me to the end because I don't want people to get confused. In theory, in other words, in respect to the muksa, you could move it while the candles are lit also for muksa. However, you can't move it with the candles on because that can put out the candle. Right? It's a separate issue. If it's a liquid one, it moves slightly. Even if it's a regular stick candle, it can fall, something can happen. So you can't move it till it's out because we're worried about putting out the candle. But in respect to just being muksa, then once it's, as long as the base is not inherently muksa in of itself, and as long as there's at least one thing that's not muksa, then we're allowed to move the base. I'm sorry that was a long-winded answer, but I want to get the principles in so we can understand the. Right. I apologize, a bit of background noise. There's some construction going on where I am. All right.
That's good. I was afraid it was us.
All good. Should be finished by next week, God willing. But just like you never take the weather report too seriously, you never take the estimated time for completion or construction too seriously either. some of the rules of life. Okay, Vov, number 6. Now we've got a separate category of muksa. Muksa machmas chesaron kis. Now, literally, muksa because of potential money loss, devaluation. So before we give it to the examples that they have here, I'll just speak. Let's say someone has a stamp collection. Now, a stamp is muksa, a regular stamp, because it's made for a purpose that we can't do on Shabbos. But you might have a collection. It's not to be used. It's to be looked at. So therefore, you could handle it. Well, sometimes people have coin collection, but it's a foreign coin. You can't use it in your country where you are. So it has no value where you live. So it's a collection, you can handle it. However, if you had one in mint condition and you don't touch it, right? Because if you handle it, it can go down in value. That's an example of this type of thing. So in other words, it's not muksa in of itself, but it's your concern. You don't want it to be handled because it can be devalued. That's what this category is. I was going to give some examples. The Hainu, for example, defines it. The Varim she'adam maxima dait l'shtamish behem. These are things that a person, his mind makes it muksa. His attitude towards it sets it aside. Because a person is very careful that it shouldn't get damaged. You're going, for example, kli umanus, craftsman's tools. You have very precision or delicate tools, and they, you don't want them to get damaged. You're very careful that they shouldn't get defective. The sakin shemaskim bois akulmus, or the knife that you use to cut a quill. Okay, today most people don't have quills in their home. I do. I'm a very amateur scribe, meaning that I studied and passed tests on the laws, but I don't have the hands for it. I used to do basic repairs, but now I have 2 sons. Well, I have 6 sons, but 2 of them Sifrim, scribes, and very, very good. So I delegate everything to them now. Right beautifully they do. Anyway, so you should know a scribe has more knives than any profession you can imagine. And not just knives, like surgical blades and razor blades. And if you discovered their kit, you might be concerned, there's some underground, who knows what going on. But scalpels, everything. But so the scalpel, they use normally a scalpel now to cut the quill. You're probably not too worried about it getting damaged. It's a stainless steel blade. The blades pop in and out, they're disposable. But in those days, what they used for writing. Another example, Vasakin shel shchita knife, which takes a long time and a lot of work to make smooth. Vasakin shel milah, circumcision knife. Again, it's another knife you want to keep in pristine condition. Likewise, writing paper. So the reason I'm going to mention different types of paper now is because they used to use old paper as like bottle stops, or where we use cling wrap or silver foil to cover things. So they used to use paper. So we're not talking about that paper. So they had better quality paper that was set aside for writing, or also contracts, right? Even though a contract signed and written on a paper, maybe the actual paper's worth 50 cents, but the contract is someone owes you $50,000. So you don't want it getting damaged, this contract. The Kislev cheshbonos and your books, you mean the ledgers books, not reading books, the books of your accounts and various things. The igroi shumakbid aleim the shomram, or letters that you take care to safeguard, because it has either because it's sentimental, it could be, but or there's something written in it that's of value. The kalim hayikorim shemishtamishim klal, or very precious utensils that you don't use at all. A crystal bowl you inherited from your great grandmother or something. Right? It's kept behind the glass and no one's ever allowed to touch it, whatever happens to be. Likewise, anything that you're very particular about, and it has its set place, it stays in its place, and you don't touch it. So all of these things, we're going to say a muksa, and we're going to give one other category. Likewise, a lot of people used to have stores in their house. So if you have utensils that are set aside to sell, right? So you've got these, dishes and cutlery that you're going to sell. So most people don't want to buy used plates. They come to buy spoons from you, and they don't want to know how many people lick them first. They want to buy brand new spoons. So therefore, they're set aside not for use. Even if they're utensils that are for a meal. So, in concept, again, using these spoons that you're going to sell, spoons are not muksa. They're the opposite of muksa, the things maybe you use the most. But these spoons are set aside. Im ein dark in the shalom, and it's of course, if it's not the norm to lend them or rent them out. And then in the brackets it says if you normally lend them out, maybe you rent out crock pots. So even though you're going to sell it in the end, but since it's something that doesn't have to be pristine condition, brand new, then it wouldn't be muksa. But ones that you do set aside, that have to be sold in top condition. Kol elo doim lahem, and anything similar to this. And another one before we actually say what the law is, let's add something else into this category. A money purse. Right? A money purse. All of these things that we're worried that they're going to get damaged, or they're very precious, or we set them aside for selling. Haiven, muksa, machmas, soren, kiss. All of these things fall into the category of muksa because of loss. Basurim betiltul afila sarach gufim fila sarach mekayma, and you're not allowed to handle them. You can't move them, even to use them if you decide to use it, or even for their place. I'm just going to close the door. Right. Even so, their place is on a counter, and you want to, you got more guests. You want to do a buffet style or something, and you want that counter space, so you can't move it. And just by the way, something that I mentioned last week, but I probably should have mentioned again this week, the definition of what makes these things in the categories is what was in your mind when Shabbos began. Right, so when Shabbos began, so we'll just use some examples. let's say a person has a candlestick that's not lit. It's not a candle there. It's a metal candlestick, and you always use it to hold the window open. Well, that's what we use it for. Presumably it's not a silver candlestick, but whatever it is. So since when Shabbos began, in your mind, it was a window stopper, then it's a window stopper, not a candlestick. While if it was a candlestick that you use as a candlestick, and again, let's say it's not lit. It was never lit. Just happens to be a candlestick when Shabbos began, then it's a candlestick and it's muksa. However, since you could potentially use it in the window or for some other reason, you're allowed to move it because of its, to use its place or to use it as the window stopper. However, if it was a 13th century solid gold antique candlestick that is in a little glass cabinet with 17 alarms and 342 locks, and it's your museum piece, then, and that's the way you look at it when Shabbos began, then it can't be moved at all. Yes, David.
Yeah, so I'll give two quick examples. One is in the late 70s, I had the merit to, after the Rebbe was leaving a Farbringen, and I was a bacher, I was able, everybody else went for shrine for food, and I was able to get the Rebbe's napkin. I have it stored inside a Tanya, and it's got little drops of wine. So once in a blue moon, I show that. I didn't think it was muksa. Or a second example is if a person had a letter from the Rebbe. I'm sure you have letters from the Rebbe. If somebody came over on Shabbos and said, "Oh, can I see the letter?" Is the letter muksa because it fits into this category of valuable articles or letters that one saves?
I think both of these circumstances are going to depend on how the individual treats them. In other words, if this letter is never touched, because we gave the example of letters that aren't touched, never touched, then whether it's from the Rebbe or from any other source, he's got a letter from his great grandmother, and it's sentimental, and he doesn't want any oils on the person's skin, wants it to last forever, then it could be muksa. But if it's something that he does show to people and he does handle, then it's not a problem. I guess the same would be with the napkin. But it depends what the person, because this is really the person's intent. And then sometimes people laminate these things.
These letters have become, the purpose is to show it. So in some ways, if the man before Shabbos was thinking that he loves to show this letter to people, I can't imagine that it would be muktzah.
Yeah, if you show it, but it could be that it could be showing it, for example. Yeah, but before we use the letter, let's go back to the antique vase. So people can look at it, but no one can touch it. So you can look at all muktzah things you like, but you can't handle them. So if it's the kind of thing, again, so whether you're allowed to move it and handle it depends on your mindset. So if the owner has these things set aside that they're not touched, or they're only touched under very special circumstances, which you can't do on Shabbos, then they're muktzah. Or what about them getting damaged?
If David is makpid, that only he handles it, he doesn't just hand it to people to handle, then it would be okay for him to handle the letter, but not for the guest. Because for the guest, it would definitely be muktzah.
Yeah, and before we even get to muktzah, if he's particular that no one can touch it, then for anyone else to handle it is stealing. Before we even get to muktzah. So, yep, that's how it can go.
I just thought it was fascinating. There's something that's muktzah for you, but not for me.
There's many things that all depend on intentions. Without getting too sidetracked, but just we had a few weeks ago in the Pasha that Esav killed Nimrod. Right, so Nimrod was an evil dictator, tyrant, murderer. We could say a few other things, but we'll keep it family friendly. He was a really horrible person, and he was an imminent risk to anyone who was in his vicinity. Now, Esav killed him. If he would have killed him with the intention to save humanity from this person, then it would have been a mitzvah. He would have been rescuing people, saving lives. Unfortunately, his intention was to steal his clothes. Right, this Nimrod had acquired some clothes that originally belonged to Adam, clothes that God made for Adam, and he wanted those clothes, so he just killed them to steal his clothes, which obviously is not a mitzvah. So there we go. All depends on intention. So you see, it has a huge impact. Okay. I just apologize. I'm just going to be 1 minute. Just, sorry about that. Just have to move from where we were. Taking over the space. All right. So the number 7, Zion. Now, Davar she'eina lav shem kli klal, something that cannot be called a utensil at all. Right, so it has no purpose. It's not something usable. The utensil, it doesn't have to be, like a pot or a spoon. Even clothes would technically fall into there, or furniture. Right, now with something that it seemingly doesn't have any use at all. We're going for an example, eitzim, pieces of wood. Right, so you can't build with it, and the other purpose, common use for wood in those days was fire, was fuel, which you, again, can't do on Shabbos. Or avonim, so you have, like bricks, stones, stones, like hatichas barzel, or pieces of metal and the like. So any of these things. Now, also gam kain b'chol tiltul. These are also forbidden. We can't handle them because they have no purpose on Shabbos, and therefore the muksa. Now, even if you need it for itself, now again, this is if you didn't give it a purpose for Shabbos. We'll come to that in a moment. Because I've given the example before, if a person has a rock as a doorstop, but he didn't have that intention when Shabbos began. Right? At the moment now, it's just a rock. Right? It's so you can't move it for itself to now make it a doorstop. You also can't move it for its place. You want to move the rock because you want to put out a picnic blanket, right? So you can't do that. Unless before Shabbos you gave it a purpose. So before Shabbos you said, this rock, we sit on it. We move it around to where we want to sit on, or we use it for a doorstop, or this piece of wood holds open the window, or whatever it happens to be. So if you give it a purpose before Shabbos, then that's fine. But if you didn't give it a purpose for Shabbos, then we can't move it neither to use it for something, or even just for its place. And therefore, also little kesam lachas b'shinov. You can't take a splinter to use as a toothpick. So if you have toothpicks, you buy a box of toothpicks, then it's already designated as a toothpick. Or maybe you have some little splinters from your wood shop that you set aside in case you need toothpicks. But just to now take a splinter that had not been designated, you can't use that. Now, neiros she'ein shleimu. Excuse me. Broken candles. Now, they can't be lit. We're talking about broken candles that are, if you have these massive candles and you're broken to two, you've now got two smaller size candles. But we're talking about a candle that's broken in a way that it can't be used as a candle anymore. The candle. Gam kain ein sham kli aleihem asum b'chol tiltul. But also, it's not called a kli anymore, has no purpose, and therefore can't be moved. Now, v'chein sulam shel aliyah. Now, the ladder we're going to mention here is for a slightly different reason. Ladder, there's different types of ladders. Now, normally a ladder is used in building. And so there's two issues. Number one is you can't move around the builder's ladder unless you gave it a purpose for Shabbos, different purpose, because it's a building tool. But the other thing is you can't carry around the ladder outside because of Maras Ayin. Maras Ayin means it looks like you're doing something bad, because it looks like you're building. I always say that today the classic case of Maras Ayin is if a person walks into McDonald's to buy a Coke. Now, before I say that, could be the Coke isn't kosher McDonald's either, because it comes out of the tap and there's stuff splashing everywhere and who knows what. But in theory, if it was, so you can imagine, someone who obviously looks Jewish, religiously Jewish, and they come out of McDonald's with a cup with a big, M on it, and having a sip, and people are going to think one of two things. Either, wow, I didn't know McDonald's was kosher, I'll go there too. And, and then they get, unfortunately, a lot more than a Coke. Or, number two, they're going to say, wow, what a hypocrite. This meant to be a religious Jew, look what he's doing. That's what Judaism is about. I'm not interested. I'm not gonna take part in it. God forbid. So either of these two things is what we call Maras Ayin, and so a person can't carry a ladder around because of Maras Ayin. However, people would sometimes have an attic, and they have a little ladder that they would move to the attic opening to be the go upstairs. So that they're allowed, Ein alav Torah's kli. That's also not considered a vessel. This is, so you can't move it around. However, again, like we said, if you gave it the purpose before Shabbos, then you're allowed to. All right, so that is number 7. Any questions on that one? Okay, number 8. Kli shemalachta leheter. Now, things that have a permissible use, or a filul isel leheter, or even they have dual uses, permissible and not permissible. Kigoyin, for example, kedairos, pots. So you have a pot, you can cook with it, which is you can't do on Shabbos. You can't cook on Shabbos, but in the same pot you can store oranges, or or something. You can use it as a bowl, as a storage implement. Vafilo kelim hamusim. Even if you have a utensil that right now it's disgusting, you don't want to use it because it's disgusting. And disgusting things are also going to mention or get to soon a muksa, because you don't want to use it as is. But because we say in brackets, the Shabbos muksa machmas mus mutter, something that's muksa because of being disgusting, you're allowed to handle. We'll see the circumstances when we get to that chapter. You're allowed to move it for the vessel's sake, meaning not only can you use it, you can move it to use it, you can move it for its place, but even because you're worried that the vessel is going to be stolen or broken. Because since ultimately it's a permissible utensil, therefore it's totally not muksa at all. But if there's no purpose at all, so a person has this pot and he just wants to, I don't know, he is just pick up a pot and move it to the other side of the room and back and forwards for no purpose. And the truth is, I guess that it's also a purpose, it's his entertainment. So I'm not sure what no purpose at all would be. But if there's for no purpose, then also taltal, and then he can't move it for no purpose at all. Okay. The Kislev Kodesh, Jewish books, Svarim, the Achlim, and food, he can move those even if there's no purpose. So you're not starting from the book. You don't need the space. You just felt like moving the book to somewhere else. Or you're not eating the food. You just feel like moving the food somewhere else. Then you're allowed to move it. Is no problem. Okay. Number 9, tests. Sorry about the background noise. Just like you're not allowed to handle muksa or something that's newly formed, like we said, like an egg that was laid or rain that fell down on Shabbos. You also can't move a vessel that was underneath it in order that they drip into it. So here we're not talking about the tray for the candle was speaking about before. Now we're talking about, you had let's say you had something to collect the rainwater and have an overflow. That's like the plants, the pots have a little plate underneath it. So you had that, something like that. You can't move it or the thing that's underneath it. Because through giving it this purpose, you took away its designation as a kli. First, it was a plate, and actually, I apologize again. It looks like they're going to turn off the internet now. The power where I am. So I do apologize. I guess this week we're going to have to finish just a little bit early. I'm really sorry about it.
Well, maybe which paragraph were you on?
We're up to test, the middle of test. We'll start tests again next week, God willing. I apologize for the early finish. So wish everyone a wonderful week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbos, everybody.
Good Shabbos.